December 7th, 1941. 7:55 hours. The island of Oahu. The air over Ford Island in the center of Pearl Harbor is torn apart by the high-pitched whine of diving aircraft and the deep, thrumming roar of radio engines. For the crew of the battleship USS Nevada, moored alone at a quarantine berth on the opposite side of the island from the infamous Battleship Row, the morning has begun like any other Sunday. Some men are finishing breakfast in the galley. Others are still in their bunks. On the deck, Seaman First Class Donald Long, his specific duty not yet recorded for history, but his post that morning was topside, would have been one of the first to look up. He sees the planes. They are low, slow, and he can clearly see the red rising sun insignia on their wings. They are torpedo bombers, Nakajima B-5N2s, the Kates. At 8:01, the ship's bugler, unable to find the call to general quarters in the chaos, simply begins blowing attention over and over. It is enough. The crew reacts not by the book, but by instinct. Aboard Nevada, the watch had already been alert. 2.50 caliber machine gun mounts forward, and two aft were manned for what was supposed to be a routine morning readiness check. At 8:02, as a torpedo plane comes in low on the port beam, those gunners open fire without waiting for orders. They are likely the first Americans to shoot back that morning. They see their tracers converge on the Kate. It shudders, banks sharply, and cartwheels into the water approximately 100 yards off the Nevada's port quarter. It did not release its torpedo. Below decks, in the ship's dynamo room, Lieutenant, junior grade, Donald K. Ross, the ship's first lieutenant in charge of damage control and engineering, is not waiting for steam orders either. He knows the ship cannot defend itself while nailed to the pier. The standard procedure to bring boilers online from a cold start takes 2 hours. But by 7:55, Nevada's chief engineer had already kept 2 of her 6 Bureau Express boilers lit, a deviation from standard Sunday protocol that likely saved the ship. Ross and his men are in the heart of the ship, managing the steam lines and electricity when the first torpedo hits. The explosion is not a sharp crack, but a deep, heavy thud that travels through the hull. It strikes the port side, near frame 30, about 15 feet below the waterline, ripping a hole estimated at roughly 20 by 30 feet into the port bow. The ship lurches, but the armored belt holds. Ross is knocked off his feet by the shock, but he gets up. Smoke and steam begin to fill the compartment. On the forecastle deck, Chief Boatswain Edwin J. Hill is already in motion. The 47-year-old Texan, a sailor since he was 17, understands that a ship tied to a dock is a coffin. With the torpedo damage and the ship beginning to list to port, Hill gathers his line handling detail. They race to the massive quays where the heavy mooring lines are secured to bollards of concrete and steel. Japanese planes are now strafing the decks, .303 caliber machine gun rounds stitching across the steel plates. Hill and his men work exposed, without cover. They cast off the lines. The Nevada is now a free ship, the only battleship at Pearl Harbor to get underway. As the gap of water widens between the ship and the dock, Chief Hill looks at the water, then back at his ship. He takes a breath and dives in. In his uniform, weighted by boots and gear, he swims through the oil-slicked, bomb-churned water, pulling himself back toward the ship he just freed. His men throw lines over the side and haul him aboard. At 8:40, the Nevada, with tugs attempting to assist, begins to move. Her screws turn, churning the muddy water of the harbor. She passes the sunken hulk of the USS Arizona, which is already a raging funeral pyre. She slides by the capsized Oklahoma. She is a moving target, and she is heading for the channel, for the open sea. But the Japanese air commander, Mitsuo Fuchida, watching from his command plane overhead, sees her. He later writes that he immediately understood the danger. If Nevada gets to the channel entrance and is sunk there, she will block the entire United States Pacific Fleet inside the harbor for months. He orders the second wave of high-altitude bombers to shift their target. They are to ignore the burning wrecks on Battleship Row and focus on the moving ship. At 8:50, the second wave arrives. This time, it is Aichi D-3A dive bombers, the Vals. They come in at an angle of about 70 degrees, screaming down from 10,000 feet. The Nevada's anti-aircraft batteries are now fully manned. The 5-inch 25 caliber guns in local control because the main fire control directors have been knocked out, fill the sky with black puffs of flak. The first bomb hits near the port bow, punching a 12-inch diameter hole through the forecastle deck. A second bomb strikes almost simultaneously on the starboard side of the forecastle. These are likely 250 kilogram general-purpose bombs. They penetrate the deck and explode inside the ship, igniting the officers' quarters. Fire sweeps through the wardroom and the staterooms. A third bomb strikes near the port waterway at frame 25. It explodes below the second deck in the wardroom. The blast blows the main deck upward, twisting steel beams and stanchions into a tangled wreck. The anchor windlass shafts are bent forward at a 20-degree angle, driven into the back of the number 1 turret's gun barrels. But the most devastating hit comes at approximately 9 o'clock. A bomb, likely a 250-kilogram or possibly a larger 500-pound device, strikes the port side of the superstructure. It hits the deck just forward of the port anti-aircraft director. It does not explode on impact, it penetrates. It tears through the port wing of the navigation bridge, rips through the signal bridge, continues down through the boat deck inside the captain's office, and finally detonates on the upper deck inside Casemate 6, against the forward edge of the stack. The explosion blows a hole downward through to the main deck and into the officer's galley. It also blows upward. The blast channels up through the captain's office, into the captain's quarters, and ignites a firestorm that races up through the signal bridge, the navigation bridge, and finally the sky control station at the top of the foremast. The navigation bridge, the brain of the ship, is now a torch. The chart house is completely gutted. The heat is so intense that the deck of the navigation bridge melts and falls away. Inside the conning tower, the armored tube that protects the ship's commander, Captain Francis W. Scanlon, the situation is untenable. He cannot see. The ship is being torn apart above him. The helm is no longer responding from the bridge. He gives the order to pass steering control aft to the emergency manual steering gear in the tiller room. Down in the dynamo room, the situation is deteriorating. The heat from the fires above is cooking the compartment. The emergency diesel generator fails. The lights flicker and die. Smoke is being sucked into the ventilation intakes. Lieutenant Ross and his men are working in almost total darkness, breathing air that is thick with smoke and fumes. A massive electrical switchboard explodes behind Ross, throwing him against a bulkhead. He is dazed, but he directs his men to rig temporary lighting to bypass the burned-out circuits. He is knocked unconscious by smoke. He revives. He refuses to leave. The ship has power. She is still moving. On the forecastle, Chief Hill is now trying to let go of the anchors. If the ship is going to sink, dropping the hooks might keep her from drifting into the channel and blocking it. He is on the bow, exposed to the full fury of the strafing and bombing. The bombs are falling in a pattern now. Walking across the ship, a stick of bombs straddles the forecastle. One lands close. The explosion engulfs the bow. Chief Edwin J. Hill is blown overboard. He is killed instantly. He will be awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously for his actions that morning. It is now 9:10. The Nevada has taken 1 torpedo and at least 5, possibly 6, confirmed bomb hits. She is on fire from stem to stern. She is flooding forward. She is settling by the bow, but she is still under her own power, still moving toward the channel. The senior surviving officer on the bridge, Ensign Joe Taussig Jr., whose leg has been nearly severed by shrapnel, continues to calmly pass steering orders. The channel is less than 1,000 yards away, but the harbor pilots and the senior commanders watching from Ford Island realize the danger. If Nevada sinks there, she will cork the bottle. Tugs rush alongside. The decision is made to beach the ship. The word is passed. Nevada is ordered to run aground on the soft mud of the Waipio Peninsula on the southeast side of the channel, near Hospital Point. At approximately 9:40, her bow digs into the mud. She is not sunk. She is grounded. The fires continue to burn for another 24 hours. By the time they are extinguished, the cost is counted: 60 men dead, 109 wounded. In the dynamo room, Lieutenant Ross finally secures his plant. He has kept the lights on, the pumps running, and the ship fighting for 3 hours. He has helped topside, where he is awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions. The ship that was mocked by some naval aviators between the wars as a rubber battleship for her supposed inability to take a hit lies broken in the mud, her back unbroken, her spirit intact. The fires aboard the USS Nevada burned through the night of December 7th and into the morning of December 8th. Salvage crews from the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard, working alongside the ship's own remaining damage control parties, fought the blazes with hoses fed by harbor tugs. The steel of the superstructure glowed dull red in places. Paint blistered and ran. The odor of burning oil, cordite, and something else, the smell of melted wiring and incinerated personal effects, hung over the ship like a shroud. By midday on December 8th, The fires were declared under control. The extent of the damage could finally be assessed. Navy divers from the salvage unit, commanded by Commander Homer N. Wallen, a man who would become legendary for his work raising the Pearl Harbor fleet, were the first to go down. They slipped into the oil-slicked water alongside the Nevada's hull. The water temperature was approximately 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility was near zero. Working by touch, they traced the outline of the torpedo hole on the port bow. It was larger than the initial estimates. The explosion had not simply punched a hole, it had buckled the frames inward, tearing the seams of the hull plates for a distance of nearly 70 feet along the length of the ship. The void inside was filled with twisted piping, shredded electrical cables, and the debris of shattered compartments. On the decks above, survey teams moved through the wreckage. The navigation bridge was a skeleton of warped steel. The chart house was gone. The sky control station at the top of the foremast, a position that had offered a panoramic view of the harbor, was a blackened, twisted cage. The bomb that had penetrated the superstructure had carved a diagonal path of destruction through the heart of the ship. In the officer's country, the wardroom was a cavern of collapsed decks and dangling wiring. The heat had been so intense in some compartments that porcelain fixtures had melted into puddles of glass-like slag. The ship's commanding officer, Captain Scanland, filed his official action report on December 15th. It was a clinical document devoid of emotion, listing damage by frame number and compartment designation. But the numbers told a grim story. The forward half of the ship was, for all practical purposes, uninhabitable. The number 1 turret, with its 14-inch guns, was still operable in theory, but the access hatches to its lower handling rooms were blocked by debris and flooding. The ship had settled into the mud at an angle. The tide rose and fell around her hull, but she did not move. She was a fixture now, a monument to the attack. The question in the minds of the admirals in Washington and at Pearl Harbor was simple. What do we do with her? The initial survey suggested she might be a total loss. The cost to repair her in time and materials could be better spent on new construction. But there was a problem. The dry docks at Pearl Harbor were the only facilities large enough on the West Coast to handle a battleship, and they were occupied. The USS Pennsylvania, the flagship, had been damaged in dry dock and was being patched. The USS Tennessee and USS Maryland, though damaged, were less severely hurt and were being prepared to return to the West Coast for permanent repairs. The Nevada sat in the mud, blocking a portion of the channel, a salvage problem of immense complexity. Commander Wallen, however, did not see a problem. He saw an opportunity. His philosophy, developed over decades of service, was simple. A ship is not sunk until the water is over the main deck. The Nevada's main deck was still well above water, except at the very bow. She was resting on the bottom, but she was not flooded throughout. Her internal watertight integrity, the very system that had allowed her to survive the bombing, was still largely intact. Wallen argued that she could be refloated. The work began in earnest in January of 1942. It was a salvage operation of a scale never before attempted on a modern battleship. The first step was to patch the hole. Divers worked in shifts, 24 hours a day, guiding steel plates into position over the gash in the port bow. These were not welded in place initially. They were bolted over the outside of the hull with thick rubber gaskets to create a watertight seal. It was crude, but it was effective. The patches were known as cofferdams. Once they were secured, powerful pumps began the slow process of pushing the water out of the flooded forward compartments. Inside the ship, another battle was being fought. The mud of Pearl Harbor had been sucked into the lower compartments, a thick black sludge that clogged pipes, filled bilges, and buried machinery. Cleanup crews, many of them men who had survived the attack and refused transfer to other ships, worked with shovels and hoses. They dug out the dynamo room where Ross had earned his Medal of Honor. They cleared the passageways. They removed the debris of the officers' quarters, bagging personal effects to be returned to families. It was grim, tedious, dangerous work. The ship was still a wreck. Fires had weakened overhead structures. Compartments were filled with fumes from decaying organic matter and spilled fuel oil. In February, as the pumps worked and the bow began to rise, a new danger emerged. The ship, lightened forward, began to shift. The mud of the harbor bottom was soft. The Nevada started to slide slowly toward the channel. Tugs were lashed to her stern and to her starboard side, their engines running constantly, pulling against the movement. It was a holding action. The salvage crews worked faster. By February 12, 1942, the hull was declared sufficiently watertight to attempt a move. The tugs, their line straining, began to pull. The Nevada's bow lifted slightly, then settled. The mud released its grip with a sucking, groaning sound that could be heard across the harbor. She was afloat. Not free, but afloat. The tugs maneuvered her inch by inch away from the beach and toward the open water of the harbor. She did not go to the main dry docks immediately. Instead, she was moved to a berth in the Navy Yard where temporary repairs could continue. The significance of the moment was not lost on the men who watched. The ship that had been mocked, the ship that had been left for dead, had risen from the mud. She was a hulk, a salvage project. But she was afloat, and afloat meant she could be repaired. On April 18, 1942, the Nevada moved again. This time, she entered dry dock number 2 at the Pearl Harbor Navy Yard. The massive caisson was sealed behind her, and the pumps began to evacuate the water. As the dock drained, the full horror of her wounds was exposed to the daylight for the first time. The torpedo hole was a ragged, gaping wound. The bomb damage to the decks and superstructure was even more extensive than the surveys had suggested. The hull was scarred and pitted from hundreds of near misses. The dock workers and shipfitters who walked under her keel, staring up at the massive wounded hull, understood what they were seeing. This was not just a repair job. This was a resurrection. The work in Dry Dock 2 took nearly 8 months. It was not simply a matter of patching holes. The entire forward section of the ship, from the keel to the main deck, was rebuilt. Old plates were cut away. New steel, rolled in American mills and shipped across the Pacific, was riveted and welded into place. The interior compartments were gutted and rebuilt. The electrical systems, destroyed by fire and water, were replaced. The anti-aircraft battery, which had proven tragically inadequate on December 7th, was completely reconfigured. The old .50 caliber machine guns, useless against modern aircraft, were stripped out. In their place, crews installed a new generation of weapons, 20mm Oerlikon cannons in open mounts and quadruple 1.1-inch anti-aircraft guns known as Chicago pianos for the sound of their firing. The Nevada was being remade for a different kind of war, a war that would be fought not in a harbor but across the vast reaches of the Pacific. By October of 1942, the work was complete enough for the ship to leave. On October 22nd, the USS Nevada, still scarred but whole, slipped out of Pearl Harbor under her own power. She was bound for the Puget Sound Navy Yard in Bremerton, Washington, for a complete modernization. The men on the docks, the survivors of December 7th who had stayed with her, watched her go. Some of them would never see her again. Others would rejoin her crew later, in the Aleutians, or in the Atlantic, or off the beaches of Normandy. But for now, the Nevada was heading home. If you're fascinated by the untold stories of World War II, the battles, the strategy, the heroes, and the hidden moments history almost forgot, then you're in the right place. This channel brings powerful, carefully researched World War II stories to life with immersive narration and authentic detail. So if you enjoy deep dives into history's most defining conflict, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Join us as we uncover the stories that shaped the world.